Hey everyone, so I wanted to talk to you guys. I know all over the internet, everywhere you look, you can find information all about the great reasons to move to Florida, Southwest Florida in particular. But what a lot of people can't find is what are the reasons to not move to Southwest Florida? So I thought I'd talk about those for a minute today. I'm gonna go over the 8 biggest things that I have found to be a potential negative, or friends, family, or previous clients have found that either deterred them from moving to Southwest Florida altogether, that caused them to potentially move away from Southwest Florida. So we're gonna get into what are the 8 biggest reasons that you should not move to Southwest Florida if you're considering it and comparing it to other places. Make sure you stick around for number 1. Watch the entire video because number 1 is the absolute number 1. The others, I didn't really rank, but number 1 is the absolute number 1 reason why people opt out of Southwest Florida. So let's get into it. Number 8, the heat and humidity. Right now, I'm shooting this at the end of January. Weather is fantastic. This is the dream weather and why people move to Southwest Florida. So I know I said I'm going to talk about the things people don't like. So right now is the great time. The opposite side of the year, the summer months, is the time when people don't like it typically the most. So wintertime, great weather, beautiful. We typically have very little rain, very little precipitation, typically run in the 60s, and highs end up in the mid to high 80s. Typically, humidity is lower than it is in the summertime. I know everybody thinks Florida's a swamp. It's always humid. It is always more humid than many places, but it is less humid in the winter months. Those like really December through April are like the peak months, great weather. It starts to warm up, starts to get more humid when you get into May and June, and then by the end of June, July, August, September, it is hot. Hot and humid, rains a lot. That is what we call our rainy season. So rains a ton, 3 to 5 days out of the year, or out of the week at least. So if heat and humidity is not your thing, Southwest Florida may not be your spot. You may decide you want to do the snowbird thing like a lot of people do. Have a place here in Southwest Florida to do the winter and spring, and then do the summer and fall up north. So number 7, bugs. Along with the warmth and the moisture comes a long growing season for everything. Plants grow all year round, so do bugs. They tend to be bigger. This was the number 1 issue that my wife has here. She can't stand it, hates bugs. Literally in our wedding vows that I am responsible for taking care of the bugs, handling the bugs that we run into. So they don't go dormant. They grow all year, they eat all year. They're around all year. You're gonna find bugs. Fire ants are huge, a huge thing. Careful when you're walking around in flip-flops barefoot. You always gotta watch where you're walking because you end up in a fire ant hill, you will not be happy. Mosquitoes as well. People say mosquitoes are crazy down here, but the reality is there's mosquitoes everywhere. Or at least if there's not mosquitoes everywhere, or not very many mosquitoes everywhere, they always seem to find me. I get eaten alive by mosquitoes. Always did as a kid growing up in Arizona. Dry, arid climate. Phoenix, got eaten alive every summer by mosquitoes. Happens in Florida too. What I did was invest in off. Nothing you can do about it, just bug spray. There are lots of different options out there to keep the mosquitoes away. And it's also, bugs are also one of the big reasons that almost everybody in Southwest Florida that has a pool has a cage, the big screened in enclosure around the pool deck. One of the reasons is to keep the bugs out. Number 6, smaller cities. Southwest Florida is made up of a bunch of smaller cities. None of them are really that big. The only real big cities in Florida, period, are Tampa, Miami, Fort Lauderdale area, Orlando, and yeah, that's it. So there's really no big cities. Southwest Florida, the largest population-wise is Cape Coral. And population in Cape Coral, I'd have to go back and double check the last census figures, but I think it's somewhere around 300,000 people. So not really, they're cities, they're okay sized cities, but they're not really big cities. So if you are from a big city and you're looking for big city activities, stuff going on every single night of the week, and multiple things going on every single night of the week, professional sporting events, college sporting events, concerts, shows, museums everywhere, happening all the time, you're not finding that in Southwest Florida unless you're willing to drive. I mean, you're still probably not finding it in Southwest Florida every night of the week, but there is stuff to do if you're willing to drive. I mean, Sarasota has some great museums. Naples has some great museums. There's activities across the entire Southwest Florida area happening on a very regular basis, but none of them have a ton of stuff going on all the time. So if that's the type of thing that you're looking for, you gotta be, I mean, the closest professional sporting events are either in Tampa or Miami. Either way, it's somewhere between an hour and 3 hours drive, because Southwest Florida from Sarasota to Naples is about 2 hours. So Sarasota, you're about an hour away from Tampa. Naples, you're an hour and a half to, depending on where in Naples, an hour and a half to 2 hours away from Miami. So if you're trying to go from like somewhere in the middle, like Fort Myers, Punta Gorda, something like that, to get to Miami or to get to Sarasota, it's gonna be 2.5 hours. To give you that access to those major sporting events, and a lot of the bigger concerts, shows, stuff like that are happening in of course, the bigger cities. So if that's what you're looking for, it's gonna be tougher to find. I mean, you can get, like, if you're right down around the River District in Fort Myers, 5th Ave in Naples, 47th Terrace in Cape Coral, downtown waterfront area in Sarasota, even to a smaller extent, the historic district in Punta Gorda. There are little city centers with, you know, some restaurants, some bars, some potentially some nightclub stuff like that. There's stuff happening, but you're gonna have to drive a little bit to get to it typically. So another big one, number 5, that a lot of people, it's a very, very common question I have from new clients looking to move into the area. And it is a reason that some people leave. Hurricanes. Hurricanes are a real thing. They happen. They're a big deal. It is what it is. I mean, when you live by the water, you pretty much got to deal with it. I mean, they're a big deal in Southwest Florida specifically. They're a big deal really throughout the entire state of Florida. The reality of it is, typically, if a hurricane hits one side of the state, it may make landfall on that side of the state, but it ends up going across the whole state. The effects are felt everywhere, although maybe not as bad in the areas that it doesn't directly pass over or make landfall. But that's the case. I mean, if you live anywhere up the east coast of the United States, or anywhere along the Gulf of Mexico, all the way across to Texas, the reality is hurricanes are hurricanes. They're gonna happen. The thing that makes me feel better about hurricanes than in other areas of the country where you have other natural disasters that happen is, at least with a hurricane, you get a heads up. You're not gonna know exactly where it's gonna make landfall. They don't know that. I mean, and stuff can change. I mean, a couple of hurricanes we've had that it's changed path at the last minute, and all of a sudden you went from, oh, it's going to pass us, to now it's going to be a direct hit on us, and it's going to make landfall in 2 hours. But you know it's coming either up the West Coast or up the East Coast, and you know it's coming at Florida days, sometimes even a week in advance. So my suggestion with dealing with that, have good insurance, make sure you've got storm shutters. If you're in an area that's prone to flooding, work out some flood protection situation, and then get on a plane and get out of town. Plan a vacation. oh, there's a hurricane coming, let's book a last minute vacation and get out. And the reality is what's gonna happen is gonna happen whether you're here or not. Come back a week or 2 weeks later after power's restored, everything's back on, and you can get back into your house, the roads are cleared, and it's safe to move around again. I mean, that's just the reality of it. That's my suggestion with that. But if hurricanes are something that terrify you, Florida in general and Southwest Florida is probably not the right spot for you. That's what it is. All right, congratulations, you made it halfway through. We just finished number 5, and if you like these videos, they're helping you in your search for making your move, or if you have other questions that I'm not answering, if I don't get to something that you have a question or concern about in the next 4 items that we talk about, please drop your comments, drop your questions, drop your concerns, drop your fears about Southwest Florida or Florida in general in the comments below. And I'll shoot another video addressing those, answering those questions, reach out to you and go over them and see how we can help, see if it's the right spot for you. So please let us know what questions you have, what comments, concerns, and don't forget, stick around for number 1 because it is the number 1 biggest reason why people choose not Southwest Florida. All right, so number 4, friendly people. I know I said this is a list of negative things. And to some people, friendly neighbors, friendly people are a negative thing, believe it or not. It seems crazy when you hear me say it, but it is a problem for some people. If you don't like friendly people, if you don't like friendly neighbors, if you don't like your neighbors driving down the street, waving hi to you, if you don't want, you go out to your mailbox to grab the mail and one of your neighbors happens to be driving by and he stops to talk to you and now you're stuck in a conversation for 15 minutes. If that's not your thing, Southwest Florida is probably not the place for you. That's what people do in the South. They're friendly. They will give you the shirt off the back the shirt off their back if they see you need help. Happens all the time, driving through communities, even in my neighborhood where I'm not in one of the, I don't live in one of the gated communities, but even in my neighborhood where most of my neighbors are on between ½ acre and 1.5 acres of property, you'll still drive down the street at 6:30 in the evening and you'll see a half a dozen people sitting in a driveway in lawn chairs. If you go through most of the gated communities, you'll see 2 dozen people sitting in somebody's driveway with lawn chairs. Kids riding bikes up and down the street, running around, throwing a baseball, frisbees, playing with dogs, whatever. I mean, the neighborhoods and people in the neighborhoods tend to come together and be very friendly, but not everyone likes that. Some people prefer their own space. They don't want to. A lot of times you end up hearing people say, oh, I got these nosy neighbors, they're crazy, they're always in my business, they're always asking questions, they always want to know what I'm up to. They're just trying to be friendly. But that is not for everybody. I can't tell you how many times I've walked the dog in the evening and I'll go to walk the dog and it's a 20-minute walk, typically, and I'll be walking down the street and one of the neighbors is a couple of the neighbors are hanging out, having a beer, leaning on the tailgate of the truck or whatever, and they'll yell over to me, stop, say hi, and then I walk over, and next thing I know, an hour and a half, 2 hours later, I'm getting a phone call from my wife saying, did you get hit by a car? What's going on? Why are you not home yet? That is the reality of Southwest Florida. In most of the neighborhoods that you will find, you're gonna have friendly neighbors. So if that's not your thing, maybe Southwest Florida is not the right spot. All right, so number 3. This one has become a relatively new topic that we've only heard about significantly over the last really year, 2 years or so. That is property taxes. Many people now, primarily people that already live here and have lived here for a while, are complaining about the property taxes when they move locally. People are really struggling with it because they've been used to it being so low for so long. Now, the reality is taxes have gone up. The amount that people are paying for taxes have gone up. The tax rates have not gone up. In fact, in most of the Southwest Florida municipalities, whether it be the counties or the cities, most of them have lowered their tax rates in the last year or so. What has gone up drastically are property values. And that's what people aren't talking about. They are talking about complaining about the fact that they're paying more in taxes, but they surely aren't complaining about the fact that their house is worth twice as much. And what happens when your house is worth twice as much? Your taxes are twice as much. In Florida, there are a couple of things as when your home is your primary residence, you can get a homestead exemption, which reduces your tax bill. It will reduce your assessed value on your home by up to $50,000. And then the taxes are adjusted accordingly based on that. The other thing is what they call our Save Our Homes bill that was passed many years ago here in Florida that has locked in that your tax bill on your existing primary residence cannot go up more than 3% per year, no matter how much your property value goes up. So if your property value goes up 100%, your taxes will still only go up 3%. And if it's not your primary residence, it still benefits you. It's just not quite as big of a benefit. So if it's your second home or even an investment property, once you own a property in Southwest Florida, your tax bill cannot go up more than 10% per year on that home. What happens is when you own a home in Southwest Florida already and you sell that and you buy a new house, the assessed value, you get taxed on the actual assessed value that first year. The tax amount adjusts. So for example, I bought my house in 2010. The assessed value on the property at that point was somewhere around $250,000. So I paid taxes based on $200,000 because my homestead exemption got $50,000 off of that. So I paid taxes on $200,000. Fast forward 13 years, my taxes have gone up 3%. My tax dollar amount has gone up 3% every year. But now, let's say I sell my home this year and I buy a new home. My new home that I buy is worth $500,000. Well, now I'm paying taxes on a $500,000 house, $450,000 of my $500,000. Now they do have another thing called portability where it adjusts proportionately from your old house to your new house. If it's your primary residence, you can't do that if it's not a primary residence. So there's little tips and tricks and things like that, but you have to make sure as your primary residence that you move that homestead to the new property. But your taxes are still going to go up. If you go from a house that you're paying taxes on based on $200,000 and it goes to a $450,000 house, your taxes are going up, and they're going up significantly because the value of your home went up. So it makes sense, even though the tax rate may have come down a little bit. So it's just one of those things, and when property values go up, taxes go up with it. But the good news is the municipalities, the tax assessor's office, they look at those things, and in terms of budgeting for the next year, they look at what are property values expected to be, what is the dollar amount that we need for our budget. Oh, we're gonna have a surplus? Okay, cool, we can reduce that tax rate a little bit because property values have gone up and we don't need that full budget. So that's what they're doing. The other thing to keep in mind with Southwest Florida and taxes, I know this isn't on the negative side, but part of offsetting those property taxes is the fact that when you move to Southwest Florida, there's no state income tax. So you're getting a raise. If your income stays the same, you actually get a raise coming from most of the states that people are coming from because they're paying a state income tax currently, and you're moving to a state with no state income tax, so you're saving that. Number two, something that I do hear people complain about fairly often is mountains or the lack thereof. Southwest Florida specifically, but really all of Florida in general, is flat. It is what it is. There's a running joke that I've heard for as long as I've been here that if you cut down the trees in Florida, you can see for miles. That's the reality of it. There are no hills. There are no mountains. It is flat. The highest points in some towns are the landfill. It's flat. That's just what it is. If you want mountains, if you like terrain variation and rock climbing, hiking through the mountains, things like that, Southwest Florida may not be your spot. However, that does not mean there are no outdoor activities. Southwest Florida that's why people come to Florida and come to Southwest Florida, is because of the outdoor activities. It's a big reason why. So tons of outdoor activities. They're just not mountain related. They're typically water related, because obviously Florida's a peninsula. It's almost surrounded by water, and in Southwest Florida, we're right on the Gulf Coast. Fantastic water, beautiful beaches, tons of water sport type activities, boating, fishing, shelling, going to the beaches. There's tons of islands that you can go explore by boat. Lots of really cool water stuff to do, jet skis, kayaking, canoeing, paddleboarding, all of those things. And there's both saltwater and freshwater things to do. There's a ton of lakes. There are rivers all over the place, creeks, canals, all kinds of stuff, all different options for water type activities. And then of course, Florida is known for having a golf course on almost every corner. You got almost as many golf courses as you do gas stations. So golfing is a huge activity here. And then also, if you're a little bit more redneckish and country, then what we tend to find, people with their big trucks and Jeeps and all that, they tend to get swamp related toys, mud related toys. Swamp buggies, ATVs, side-by-sides. They put these massive, if you don't know what a swamp buggy is, it depends, but they build them a lot of times out of old tractors, or just take a big, build their own platform. I've seen them built out of pontoon boats. They start off at the base of a pontoon boat. Basically, what it tends to be is a big flat deck, almost like a pontoon boat that goes on land or through the mud. Put these huge tractor tires on them, big motor and transmission, and bolt some seats onto the top of it, and just go cruise through the mud. And they're about 8 feet in the air. Swamp buggies, so that's your swamp buggies, ATVs, side-by-sides. You see ATVs and side-by-sides with these big, huge monster truck tires and stuff like that on them too. And they'll just go play in the mud, and there's big mud parks in Florida specifically designed for that. So that may be your jam too. Tons of stuff to do outdoors, but there are definitely no mountains. So if mountains are your thing, may not be the right spot. So last but not least, here we are. Number one, the number one reason why people opt out of Southwest Florida. The wet, humid climate. I know we talked a little bit about weather earlier in the heat, the hurricanes and all that, but the number one reason that people opt out of Southwest Florida is because it is a wet, humid climate. Like I said, in the winter, typically doesn't rain a whole lot, but all of the summer, kind of starting late spring, but definitely all of the summer and most of the fall. Trust me, it doesn't feel like fall, but the fall months, it rains more than it doesn't rain in terms of number of days a week. Now, it's not typically like rainy all day, overcast all day, or anything like that. It's usually mid to late afternoon, we get a massive downpour for like an hour and then it's done. But then it's like a steam room the rest of the evening because now the sun comes back out and it's so hot that all of that moisture is evaporating off the ground, and now it's hot and steamy. So that wet, humid climate, if you're not a fan of steam rooms, Florida may not, and Southwest Florida may not be the place for you. It's like the opposite of, and like I said earlier, I grew up in Arizona, in Phoenix. Phoenix, I liken to a sauna or your oven. People always say, oh, it's not so hot out there, or it doesn't feel as hot out there because it's dry heat. Yeah, well, so is your oven. Most people don't turn that on and then stick their head in to cool off or dry off. It's hot. Here, it's hot and humid. It's not nearly as hot. You're typically in the mid 90s in the summer months, where in many of the places in the Southwest, you're in the 105, 110, 115, 120. So it's not nearly as hot, but it's definitely humid. You will sweat more for sure because that humidity is going to cause you to sweat more. So it's a tropical, humid environment, is what it is. The nice thing about it, you don't have to worry about lotion nearly as much because your body is producing plenty of moisture on its own. And I've had a lot of people tell me actually that it's much better for their skin. They look younger longer because of the moisture in the air. It helps keep your skin moist. You don't get all that dry, like up north in the winter especially, you end up dry, cracked, cold skin. And you get the same thing in other areas in the Southwest and Phoenix. Constantly like cracked knuckles, lotion all the time, lotion on my face all the time, because the lack of moisture in the air just sucks the moisture out of your skin. Here in Southwest Florida, you don't have that problem. So that's it. Those are the 8 reasons. Like I said, if this did not answer your question, your concern, did not address your fear, drop us a comment, let me know what it is, and we'll see if we can address it on the next one. And please check out our other videos, all geared towards living in Southwest Florida, what it's like, pros and cons, all that good stuff. So check them out and let us know how we can help. And if you are thinking about moving to Southwest Florida, want to talk in detail about your specific situation, call, text, email, send us a message here, whatever, just get in touch with us. Let us know how we can help, because the only way we can help figure out your specific situation and if this is the right spot for you, and then where within Southwest Florida is the right spot for you, is having a conversation with us. Thanks for watching.